15 accountants let down a millionaire, but a delivery girl revealed a surprising truth. Jake Thompson sat in his sleek high-rise office, the skyline of Chicago sprawling beyond his window. He was a king without a kingdom, suffocating under the weight of crumpled bills and deceit. The betrayal of his 15 accountants twisted like a knife in his gut. They promised to manage his fortune as if it were their own, weaving intricate webs of trust that now lay in tatters. Just 6 months ago, celebrations echoed in this very room. Now, it felt like a tomb. His heart raced. How could he have been so blind? These men, whom he considered trusted allies, had led him to the brink of financial ruin. Each miscalculation drove him deeper into the abyss of despair. Every breath felt heavy with the stench of failure, and guilt gnawed at him. Letting down his family, his loving wife, and children who looked to him as their rock haunted him every waking moment. The looming deceit tainted his thoughts. Could he really have misjudged them all? "I'll fix this," he muttered, gripping the edge of his mahogany desk. Yet a nagging voice inside questioned his capability. He fought against the internal storm, feeling like a marionette tangled in frayed strings. The world outside his glass tower shimmered with life, while he felt distinctly irrelevant, an empty shell of the man he once was. He swiped at a stray tear. How could he let his family see him like this? The irony sat heavy. Wealth offered freedom, yet here he was, imprisoned by the invisible chains of guilt and financial collapse. In this moment of despair, fate intervened. A sharp knock echoed against the door, snapping him from his turmoil. "Delivery!" a cheerful voice rang out. He hesitated. Would he be recognized? With a sigh, he opened the door to find a young woman, her hair a cascade of curls, balancing a food delivery bag. For a flash of a heartbeat, her eyes locked onto his. She didn't flinch. Instead, she gazed with an unexpected honesty that cut through his fog of embarrassment. "You look like you could use some good food and company," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos that surrounded him. For the first time in weeks, he exhaled. "You have no idea. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue." As their unexpected conversation unfurled, Leela's resilience shone through amidst her tales of hardship. She balanced multiple jobs and cared for a sick grandmother, embodying the grit and determination that maintained her family's spirits. In her smile, Jake found an unfiltered view of life, one not obscured by wealth. Could he learn from her? As they brainstormed ideas to challenge his accountants, he felt a flicker of determination ignite within him. But the questions clawed at him. How could a millionaire like him take advice from someone who struggled just to make ends meet? The inadequacy swelled, every laugh they shared cutting into his confidence. Just as they began to conceive a plan, Lila's grandmother revealed an ancient family document. Its faded ink promised secrets and connections that sent shockwaves through Jake. Was there a link between their families? Suddenly, hope mingled with chaos. But then, a text illuminated his phone. It was from his former confidants, a reminder of betrayal and swirling doubts. Jake stood at a precipice of anguish. Could he trust Lila as they launched into the storm of confrontation? Desperation crashed down, twisting his mind into knots. The calm before the storm was now deafening. The weight of morality rested heavily on him. Beyond wealth, could he rediscover integrity amid this detachment? Or would the walls he'd built to protect himself shatter completely, leaving him exposed to all the dangers of his past? Jake stood frozen, his mind racing as the weight of Lila's words settled in. The prospect of newfound secrets twisting through their family's histories sparked an ember of curiosity, battling against the shadows of his doubt. Could this connection offer him the leverage he needed to reclaim his life? Instinctively, his hand brushed over the phone again, hesitating as he read the message again. Ignoring his former allies might seem foolhardy, yet every second spent with Lila carved out a new path that felt worth exploring. "Do you think it's real?" he asked, not entirely sure whom he was trying to convince. The ancient document had an air of authenticity, but that was hardly assurance enough. His belief in people had dwindled to nothing, and yet here he was, embarking on an uncertain journey with a stranger. Lila looked at him with sincere determination. "We won't know until we investigate. There's power in knowing where you come from, Jake. Maybe it's time for you to find that." His heart drummed harder against his chest. There was something so refreshing about her vigor, an infectious energy he hadn't encountered in ages. He could see it wasn't just a fleeting determination either. Lila carried a profound resilience within her, honed from struggles that he had hardly known. It struck him, her trials were different from his, but they were trials nonetheless. Perhaps that's what he had lost sight of in his stupor, the resolve that blooms from adversity. As Lila outlined potential leads, Jake found himself scribbling notes furiously, overwhelmed by the clarity of purpose seeping through him. Every name, every historical figure she shared seemed to illuminate a dark chamber within his mind that he had left untouched for far too long. Trust was hard-earned, but with her by his side, it felt viable again. Suddenly, Lila's phone buzzed. Her expression shifted slightly, concern casting a fleeting shadow over her earlier enthusiasm. It was her grandmother. Something urgent was amiss. Jake could sense how important that family connection was to her, and his own quest for reassurance sparked a sudden connection around them. "We can pick this up later," he suggested, but the glimmer of urgency in her eyes told him it wasn't an option. "Let's check together," he declared, surprising even himself. The push was born from something deeper, an impulse to confront uncertainty head-on, a desire for authenticity blooming beneath his despair. They left the office, stepping into a world that felt shockingly unfamiliar, a world that had continued spinning, oblivious to the turmoil trapped in the walls of his high-rise. As they crossed the street, Jake felt the thrill of possibility churn in his stomach, a welcome relief from the bitterness he had long consumed. He questioned what he might achieve alongside Lila, ignited by her fire. Yet looming behind him was the specter of his once trusted accountants, their betrayal still fresh in his mind. Could he really shake free from their grasp? Identity had been intertwined with wealth in his mind. But what if he could redefine himself, rising stronger from the ashes of his fall? 2 streets over, Lila's grandmother's apartment materialized in front of him, an unassuming building that somehow felt monumental. As they entered, uncertainty dripped from every surface. Jake was stepping into an authentic moment, raw and unfiltered. He reached for the door handle, mentally preparing for where the journey might lead. Was this the confrontation he had been avoiding? Would the answer lie within the secrets of their families? With the door creaking open, a new chapter waited just beyond. And as their eyes adjusted to the dim light, Jake braced himself for the unknown. The truth was about to unfold. The moment of confrontation was imminent, and he could only hope he was ready. The room enveloped Jake as he stepped inside, shadows clinging to the corners, reminders of secrets that might soon bubble to the surface. He could almost feel the history saturating the air, thick with unspoken words. Lila's presence beside him was both a comfort and an unsettling reminder of how far he had strayed from himself. Could he trust her? The answer remained elusive, alive in the electricity of the moment. As Lila stepped deeper into the dim light, her attention diverted to her grandmother, a tangle of worry surfacing in her voice. "Grams, are you all right?" The exchange stirred something within Jake. Lila's concern illuminated another facet of strength, her vulnerability amidst uncertainty. He stood to the side, awkwardly defining his space, half intrigued, half nervous about what lay ahead. Before long, the elder woman emerged from the kitchen, her frail frame tense with urgency that knotted Jake's stomach. She held a kitchen towel in her hands, fidgeting with it as if it contained secrets desperate to escape. Leela moved closer, a wave of reassurance washing over her grandmother as their eyes met. "It's about the family," she finally whispered, voice barely breaking the silence. Suddenly, Jake was no longer an outsider. He felt a perverse sort of clarity flowing through him, as though he were stepping closer to the precipice of his own identity. The intertwined histories between their families might just offer more than answers. They could offer redemption. "What happened?" Leela pressed, her tone urgent. The words left her lips almost without thought, revealing her torrid emotions. Jake recognized that same ache for belonging reflecting off Leela and her grandmother. An attempt to piece together disjointed fragments of love and loss. "I found something," Grams managed, her voice wavering. "Old letters. They indicate ties we haven't spoken of, connections that could change everything." Change. The word hung in the air, full of possibilities and threats. A nerve pulsed through Jake. Could this be the turning point he craved? He leaned in, heart racing. What kind of connections? The question threaded itself into an unexpected moment of defiance. The years of feeling overshadowed by wealth, deceit, and betrayal urged him forward, daring to confront whatever truths these letters held. Graham's gaze shifted between Leela and him, a complex dance of uncertainty at play. Ties that were buried, Jake. Some were lost due to pride, others due to treachery. Her voice cracked, and in that moment, Jake felt a depth of resolve he hadn't considered was possible before tonight. The concept of hidden narratives appealed to his thirst for reinvention. "Let's see them," he urged. The urgency in his own voice shocked him. In this moment, he was not just a man adrift. He was a seeker of his own legacy. With a barely contained breath, Grams wobbled towards a dusty cabinet in the corner, motioning for them to follow. A part of Jake feared unearthing the truth, but another clung desperately to the hope that these letters held the keys to transparency. Could this expose not only familial ties, but also the very essence of who he was? The cabinet creaked open, revealing a box filled with yellowed papers, each one an echo of decisions made long ago, histories intertwined with choices that had defined generations. Grams began to sift through them, patience wearing thin. Jake felt his heart hammer, eagerness competing with an undercurrent of dread. "What secrets have defined you, Jake?" he questioned internally. He anticipated deeper discoveries that could either liberate him or unravel the remnants of his identity. As Grams finally produced the letter, rustling it with delicately trembling fingers, time felt suspended. But as she unfolded it, the room shifted. Shadows swelled as if expecting something monumental. Would these letters be his salvation, or merely a reckoning of lost integrity? Questions loomed over Jake's consciousness, like clouds before a storm, brewing with emotions. Had long silenced. This moment would demand much of him, far more than any business meeting, more than he had given even to Leela. With his decision to embrace the unknown, the time had truly come to face whatever awaited within those fragile pages. And as Grams read the first line aloud, Jake realized he was on the cusp of a revelation that could awaken everything he feared and longed for. The air shifted, anticipation hummed within him. What he didn't know was that the truth could lead him to an unforeseen confrontation. Could he handle it, especially if it meant facing those who had betrayed him once more? As Graham's voice resonated through the room, Jake felt every syllable reverberate through his core. There, perched between the known and the unknown, he was poised on the brink of a personal abyss. Each word she uttered was like a sharp blade cutting through the carefully constructed layers of his identity. The way Grams read the letter, slowly, hesitantly, added weight to every phrase. "Dear Margaret," she began, her voice trembling. Jake couldn't help but fixate on the name. Who was this Margaret? Did she belong to a time when family connections were less fraught with distrust and deceit? As he grappled with his mounting curiosity, another realization pierced his thoughts. Those words could unravel the story of who he was, a narrative marked by too many silences. Grams continued, her gaze unfocusing as she read. Your father's decision weighed heavily on our hearts, secrets that have burdened our lineage. Each passage seemed to peel away layers of Jake's accumulated skepticism. With every revelation, Jake was forced to confront the possibility that the hidden histories of his family were not just fragments of the past, but blueprints influencing his existence. Leela's hand slipped into his, grounding him. The warmth of her palm ignited something dormant, his desire to challenge his boundaries. He hadn't just been an aimless soul floating through life. He had a legacy to reclaim. He felt the old familiar ache of doubt giving way to a flicker of determination. You have to tell us what this is about, Leela urged quietly, breaking the silence that had enveloped them. A ghost of a smile danced upon Jake's lips, igniting the first flickers of courage. In this moment, surrounded by deep unease, he embraced every hope and fear that surged within. He understood he was not merely an observer. He wanted to be part of a larger story, his own. Grams glanced at him, her eyes reflecting both wisdom and sorrow. Our family was torn apart by greed and betrayal, Jake. It led us to this moment, the possibility of choice. We can either continue to bury these truths or look them in the eye. Choice. The concept coiled around him, suffocating yet liberating. He had spent years living within the confines that others had built for him, let down by those he should have been able to trust. But now, confronted with these remnants of the past, Jake sensed the fire within him building. He was ready to challenge the narrative. What if we confront them? Jake blurted out, the words escaping his mouth before he could second-guess himself. What if we use these letters to bring closure for everyone? His declaration hit the room with a palpable impact, leaving Grams and Lila surprised. The butterflies that had nestled in his stomach took flight, fueled by the sheer audacity of the thought. Would they actually consider confronting the dregs of betrayal head-on? Jake, Grams murmured, her eyebrows knitted. This isn't just a tale of nostalgia, it's lived experiences layered with pain. But we can't simply unveil the past without understanding the risks. But we risk more by staying silent, interjected Lila, her voice tinged with urgency. What if we instead embraced the truth, recognized it, how it shaped us? It might just give us the strength to be who we were meant to be. Jake caught fire at her words, his heart pounding against his chest. It wasn't just about confronting ghosts, it was about liberation. He saw a future breathing with possibilities, where transparency began to unravel the knots that had choked the relationships around them. A slight smile overcame Graham's lips as she considered the idea. Then perhaps the time has come to shine the light on these shadows, she said softly, the weight of decision palpable on her frail shoulders. As they all leaned closer, the atmosphere thickened with anticipation. Grams picked up another letter, fingers trembling with purpose, flipping it over to unveil its secrets to the gathered trio. The moment felt monumental. Jake felt he was no longer on the periphery, but at the heart of something profound, a collective mission. But soon, a question lingered on his lips. Could they really face down those who had hurt them, or would the confrontation collapse under the weight of long-standing resentments? The truth, with all its vulnerability, beckoned. As the next line unfurled, Jake realized he might find more than answers about his lineage. He might unearth the healing balm his spirit desperately craved. But first, he had to brace himself for what would emerge from those pages, and whether he would possess the strength to confront what lay beyond. As the faint rustle of the yellowed paper filled the room, Jake's heart raced in anticipation. Each unfolding layer of their family's history pressed upon him, stoking an urgent need to understand not just the past, but also the trajectory of his own life. He clenched Lila's hand, drawing strength from her presence, and focused on Graham's, whose expression had morphed from trepidation to cautious trust. "Let's see what truths await us," Graham said, her voice gaining momentum, propelling them forward into a narrative that might shatter or enlighten. The letter's contents were bound to set the course for their path ahead, one he could no longer ignore. As she read on, detailing betrayals woven into their family tapestry, Jake began to recognize the predicaments that had led the adults in his life to make choices that had long reverberated through generations. There were financial disputes, rivalries entrenched in pride, and ultimately a heartbreaking fracture of family bonds. With every detail, he understood more clearly how this inheritance of pain had seeped into his own psyche. The arrival of the settlement was met with deceit. "Your aunt was lost in the shadows of jealousy," Grams continued. With each line, Jake felt an evolution in his understanding of himself. The weight of expectation he had carried began to feel like a shared family burden rather than an individual affliction. Could it be that their choices reflected his own fears about failure, about disappointing those he loved? As Grams concluded the letter, she glanced up, her eyes locking onto Jake's. "We have an opportunity here, not just to confront our past, but to reclaim our future." It was a statement that resonated deeply. The thought of taking ownership of their shared history ignited a spark in Jake's chest. He was used to being a passive actor in his life, allowing others to dictate the story. But now, with the scales of his family's past laid bare before him, he sensed a tectonic shift. "Grams, Lila," he began, the conviction swelling within him. "We can't just look at these letters as relics of regret. They are our guide, a catalyst for change. I want to connect with those family members, speak the words we've been too afraid to voice." His tone radiated determination, startling even himself. Lila squeezed his hand tighter, a sign of her steadfast support, while Grams took a breath, considering his resolve. Jake believed in the truth as a tool, a means of dismantling the barriers that prevented him from living authentically. The idea felt revolutionary, yet acutely daunting. Could he really carry this mission out? "Yes, but we need a plan," Graham said, her voice steady now, alive with purpose. "We can't afford to dive in blindly. Each person we confront has their own scars." Plan. The word hung in the air, a defining call to shape the unknown into something tangible and actionable. Jake felt invigorated, embracing the challenge that lay ahead. He understood now that this journey required more than just courage. It demanded a blend of compassion and strategic foresight. Determining the tone of their approach would be crucial, as he reflected on the delicate emotions each family member had likely suppressed over the years. It was about inviting dialogue rather than igniting conflicts. His upbringing had taught him to fear confrontation, but this newfound perspective shifted the very foundations of what he believed was possible. "We should write letters," Jake suggested, an idea taking form. "Reach out with honesty. We can express our intentions clearly and prepare for the conversations we want to have." Grams nodded, slowly absorbing his thoughts. "It's a wise approach, Jake. It shows we're ready to listen, but also to stand firm against past injustices. We'll need to be prepared for their responses, especially if the hurt runs deep." Lila leaned forward, her eyes glowing with admiration for Jake's emerging leadership. "Let's craft messages that maintain respect while exposing our truths. It will show them the courage we've gained by confronting our own pain." Jake felt the igniting alchemy of unity and purpose surge through them, a realization that together they could challenge not just their past, but also the shackles on their future. As they laid out a detailed plan, a new sense of optimism ignited within him. Yet in the depths of his mind, an unsettling doubt lingered. Would their families be receptive to the vulnerability they were willing to bear? Or would Jake's initiative plunge them deeper into resentment? The path ahead unfolded with potential, but so too did the fear of failure, each risk tempered by the hope of liberation. With his breath steadying, Jake understood that the most challenging revelations were yet to come. A confrontation loomed on the horizon, and only time would ensure they would emerge from it unscathed. The journey had begun, but soon Jake realized he must face the most significant question of all. Could he remain steadfast in this endeavor when the past came rushing back to haunt him? The following days became a whirlwind of strategy and emotion, each moment tinged with the weight of Jake's newfound resolve. The trio spent hours dissecting family dynamics, poring over the letter's implications, wrestling with the emotional scars they would undoubtedly encounter. Each idea turned into a letter, each letter becoming a stepping stone to confront history. As Jake leaned over the table, I couldn't shake the doubt lodged deep in his chest. The trembling prospect of rejection hovered like a specter. Would his family extend the olive branch, or would they reinforce the barriers that had been erected for years? Leela could sense his hesitation. Focus on the possibilities, she urged, her voice a soft but firm anchor amidst the rising tide of anxiety. Change begins with this moment. Your courage has already shifted the narrative. Jake appreciated her support, but couldn't shake the gnawing shadows of what-ifs. The first recipient would be his Aunt Marlene, the architect of many familial grievances, the figure overshadowed by resentments alike. The thought of reaching out to her was like stepping onto a tightrope, where a misstep could send him plummeting into old grievances instead of addressing them. "Let's outline what you want to say," Graham suggested, her wisdom glowing with quiet anticipation. They sat together, crafting a letter that articulated Jake's desire to mend the rift, acknowledging the pain, yet emphasizing potential paths toward reconciliation. Each word was a gift, a chance to heal, yet imbued with the risk of loss. With each written draft, Jake began to feel a flicker of hope. It wasn't just about confronting the past, it was about rewriting his story, one where he claimed agency over his own life. The act of writing transformed the weight he bore into wings. The time came for them to narrow their focus on the very hard truths that plagued Marlene. Jake envisioned her backlash, but he also wanted to embrace the possibility that vulnerability could foster forgiveness. Surrounded by loved ones, he mulled over how this expression could provide clarity for both. Marlene may be entrenched in her own pain, but he realized that confronting her might also allow him to understand the roots of their conflict. As they finalized the letter, he found himself sitting in quiet contemplation. Lila's words from earlier resonated within him. He was capable of instigating change. During dinner that evening, Grams announced that she'd have her own letters ready, a call to a few relatives with whom she had unresolved histories. Jake felt his pulse quicken. His small endeavor was becoming a collective push towards healing. Perhaps his initiative was nothing short of a catalyst. Later, as night descended, he found quiet alone in his room, reflecting on the oppressive silence that had blanketed their family for so long. Writing had liberated him. It illuminated a path where shadows once reigned. But could unsolicited apologies or heartfelt expressions mend wounds that ran deep? The doubts returned, swirling in frenetic loops. What if Marlene lashed out? What if they reopened old scars? Yet buried beneath those fears flickered a resolute courage. The journey Jake was on wasn't just about transcending familial pain. It was about defining the man he wanted to become. He no longer wished to be a passive observer in his life. The idea electrified him, pushing the stifling anxieties aside. The next morning, Jake finally sealed the letter addressed to Marlene, feeling both triumphant and terrified. It was a pivotal step, but it came with its fair share of consequences. As he held the envelope, a strange mix of dread and exhilaration coursed through him. Jake had cast the dice of vulnerability, but would fate play into his hands, or would he be faced with the harsh reality of rejection? With a deep breath, he released the letter into the mailbox, surrendering to the uncertainty that lay ahead. He had embraced this moment of connection, yet the looming thought crippled him. How would Marlene respond? One small step had been taken, yet the confrontation was far from over. The moment of truth loomed large, and the question echoed in his mind. Would he be prepared for whatever fallout came knocking at his door? As days trickled by, each hour grew more pregnant with anticipation. Jake found himself oscillating between anxiety and cautious optimism, a miserable dance in his mind. The envelope that held his vulnerability sat like a stone at the bottom of his stomach, heavy and unyielding. He grappled with fleeting moments of hope. What if Marlene responded positively? What if she took his words to heart and offered understanding instead of scorn? But the specter of rejection loomed larger than the possibility of acceptance. He started pacing the narrow confines of his room, the walls pressing in.
The very air felt charged with potential energy, a paradoxical tension between freedom and confinement. With every passing hour, he buried himself deeper into work. The monotony of spreadsheets and balance sheets became a refuge. Numbers offered certainty in a world where his personal affairs festered in ambiguity. On the surface, it seemed that Jake found purpose in routine, yet beneath it all lay roiling questions about his choices. Was he trying to delay or simply avoiding the inevitable? Graham soon returned from her appointments, her face alight with a mix of hope and apprehension. She shared snippets of her correspondence, each letter igniting a small spark in Jake's chest. Through her, he could witness the mechanics of the reconciliatory process. She faced her own ghosts with an openness that encouraged him. Yet, once the exchange was over, a creeping sense of isolation returned. The next weekend, driven by the specter of inactivity, Jake visited a local park, hoping to discover pockets of clarity among the buzzing life around him. As he ambled, absorbing the vibrant energy and subtle life lessons offered by strangers, he observed people's interactions, smiles over coffee, laughter among friends, and children chasing invisible dreams across the grass. Each encounter held a mirror to his struggles. They seemed to embody everything he sought, acceptance and connection, yet he felt stranded in fear. He watched as a small child boldly approached a group, seeking companionship without the burden of judgment that adults bore so heavily. It struck him how easy it seemed to them, a genuine desire for connection unencumbered by societal expectations. In that moment, Jake questioned whether he had the courage to purge his adult fears and embrace raw vulnerability like a child. The thought shimmered momentarily before reality cast a shadow. Suddenly, a movement across the field caught his eye. A woman selling flowers approached, her infectious laughter ringing through the air. Without hesitation, she leaned into a brief conversation with a couple, offering blooms and light-hearted banter as if they were all long-lost friends. Jake felt a pang of longing, a yearning to embody that unguarded connection. Back home, Jake allowed himself a quiet meditation on the day's revelation. What was it about vulnerability that struck such terror deep in his bones? Perhaps it was the fear of being judged or dismissed, but he recognized now that growth lay in confronting discomfort. The child in the park represented everything he wished to reclaim: openness, authenticity, unencumbered trust. That night, he sat at his desk, pen poised and ready, determined to reshape his pending crossroads. Flickers of inspiration turned into fire. A draft began to emerge on his screen, capturing the essence of his fears and hopes, but with a new resolve. Yet, just as he was about to hit send, a notification pinged on his phone, drawing his attention away. It was a message from Grams, an update pertaining to her letters. Jake felt a shiver of impatience. Was this about to pivot their journey or simply rehash something better left untouched? He hesitated. The moment stretched as anticipation surged anew. Would her revelation spark further awakening or deepen the abyss between them? The very future of their endeavors hinged on this communication. A sense of dread pooled in the pit of his stomach. The time had come to face whatever had been stirred beneath the surface, whether clarity or chaos awaited him. Jake inhaled deeply, attempting to steady the tremor in his hands as he unlocked his phone. Graham's message lingered like fog rolling over a cliff. It promised obscurity, yet might also reveal something enlightening. The screen lit up with her words, and as he read, anxiety coiled tighter within him. Her update was a recounting of past grievances, interspersed with the hope that perhaps reconciliation was just around the corner. But buried within her reflections was a confession. She had never fully confronted her own failures, each word a mirror reflecting Jake's identical struggles. He read her final line multiple times, where she expressed a desire for them both to learn from their mistakes. It was a call to action, a challenge that ignited something dormant within him. The weight of the message compelled him to act. What he had dreaded, the confrontation of pain, now felt like an opportunity for liberation. He scrolled back through his previous drafts, the words he had so carefully constructed now inspiring his next steps. Jake knew he needed to take ownership of his own vulnerabilities, not just for himself, but for Grams, for the connection they both silently craved. With renewed determination, he began crafting a response, pulling from an emotional well long neglected. The words flowed from his mind, each sentence striking like a hammer against the cold steel of his insecurities. He admitted his own fears, his feelings of inadequacy, and detailed his desire to make amends, not just with Grams, but with the lingering ghosts of his own past failures. As he wrote, he could feel the heaviness of each word transforming into a sense of clarity. Yet, as he neared the end, doubt snuck in like an uninvited guest. What if this effort was for naught? What if it all disintegrated, much like his previous attempts had? He paused, staring at the screen as the cursor blinked back at him, tauntingly impatient. Suddenly, his mind flashed back to the little boy in the park, fearless and eager for friendship. Jake realized this was his moment, an opportunity to shed his former fears and bravely extend the hand of connection. The image of the child chasing dreams resonated, urging him onward. Maybe it was time to embrace vulnerability, to shake off the shackles of adulthood that had restrained him for too long. Finally, with a deep breath, he clicked send. The moment unfurled, each second stretching longer than the last as he awaited Graham's reply, a blend of exhilaration and terror washing over him. The screen went dark, but his mind was racing. How would she respond? Would his words ignite more than acknowledgement? The evening settled in around him, and he busied himself with chores around the house. Yet the anticipation gnawed at him, each minute a reminder of how much he was stalling. Was it possible that this could lead to something greater? An unforeseen path where both he and Grams might navigate through mutual fears and emerge renewed? As time passed and no response came, doubt pricked at the corners of his mind like a persistent nettle. On impulse, Jake picked up his phone again, scrolling through his previous conversations, looking for courage in the digital connections he often overlooked. Each exchange with family or friend was a reflection of the closeness he craved but found so difficult to attain. Then a sudden idea struck him. What if he invited Grams for coffee the next day? It was a small step, but it could solidify the conversation he longed to have. They needed interaction, dialogue that couldn't be confined to screens or text. His heart raced anew as he drafted the message. An invitation seeped in hope, yet tinged with apprehension about what lay ahead. There was power in connection, and the moment had arrived for him to truly confront his fears. As he hit send on the invitation, anticipation fluttered in his chest. Would she say yes? Were they ready to take that leap together? When the notification appeared, he felt a rush of energy. Yet the response was not what he expected. Would it lead him down the path of growth he envisioned, or open a can of worms they were not prepared to handle? Jake's heart sank as he read Grams's reply. Instead of acceptance, her words dripped with lingering resentment and wariness, each sentence a careful barricade against his optimism. "I'm not ready for coffee, Jake. I don't know if we can just bury the past over a cup of coffee." The message was brief but heavy, a drawn curtain that shrouded the light of potential reconciliation. Staring at the screen, Jake felt the walls he had been dismantling reconfigure around him. This was a setback, yet instead of retreating into himself, something within him ignited. The initial sting forced him to confront a stark reality. He had expected too much too soon. Change often required slow, deliberate steps, and he realized this moment, heartbreaking as it was, might be the catalyst for a deeper understanding. He leaned back in his chair, contemplating his grandmother's words. Had he really changed? Though he had poured his vulnerabilities into that last message, he'd subconsciously clung to the hope she would respond with open arms. But true growth required not only self-exposure, but understanding the other's journey too. Grams had her own battles. Judging her response solely on his feelings felt unfair. Taking a deep breath, Jake opened a new message. Rather than pressing for an immediate meeting, he would validate her hesitance. "I understand, Grams. I'm here when you're ready to talk." The strain of his promise to be patient settled uncomfortably in his stomach, but he pressed send anyway. This wasn't about him. It was about regaining their connection, whatever that meant. The echo of hope still thrummed within him, buoyed by resolve. The initial interaction had opened him up more than he anticipated. As the evening wore on, he abruptly realized the coffee invite had illuminated an important lesson about himself. His inclination to rush progress stemmed from a desperate need to fix things, to control outcomes he truly couldn't dictate. Wouldn't it be wiser to embrace the uncertainty? With a newfound determination, Jake embarked on a personal challenge. He decided to immerse himself in listening to the people around him, starting with Grams. Instead of reaching out with expectations, he would cultivate patience and curiosity, allowing their conversations to unfold organically. Perhaps understanding what burdens she carried might awaken the compassion they both needed to mend their wounds. In the days that followed, Jake visited his local cafe and began striking up conversations with familiar faces, baristas, delivery personnel, and patrons. Each interaction served not only as an escape from his worries, but also as a reminder of the diverse stories threading through life. Footing firmly planted in presence rather than pursuit of outcomes, he bought coffee for a delivery girl one morning, and they struck a surprising rapport over anecdotes of their respective lives. Her laughter danced in the air, simple yet grounding, leading Jake to realize the power of connection extended beyond his grand intentions. Jake's practice evolved into an exploration of vulnerability and communication, and with each encounter, he peeled back another layer of his reluctance. Conversations that once felt daunting began to flow more easily. Still, with Grams, the threads of their relationship felt tangled. She remained elusive, holding her thoughts close, but he was resolute. With enough time, he believed he would see the look of recognition in her eyes, as if they would rediscover parts of themselves through patience. But as he prepared for another day, Graham's absence weighed heavily in his mind. The thought of reaching out again groomed with anticipation, yet fear crept back, whispering doubts of whether further attempts would only exacerbate her resistance. Suddenly, a message notification broke through his contemplation. Would it be Graham's? What knowledge would she impart that might change everything for both of them, and if he truly had the courage to embrace whatever it might entail? The notification was indeed from Grams, but this time her words felt lighter, yet still laced with caution. "I've been thinking, Jake. Maybe we can meet tomorrow. I want to discuss your letter, but let's keep it simple." Overwhelmed with a rush of hope, Jake took a deep breath, steadying his racing heart. Tomorrow marked a significant turning point. It was a chance to confront the very fabric of their fractured relationship. This was the opportunity he had been waiting for, and he wouldn't let it slip. Away. The next day, as he approached the cafe they had chosen, Jake felt a mixture of nerves and excitement coursing through him. The air was crisp, and each step resonated with the potential for growth. He envisioned their conversation unfolding as a dance, delicate yet powerful, allowing space for both harmony and discord. When Grams arrived, she looked softer, her usual guarded demeanor slightly unfastened. They found a cozy corner table, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee enveloping them as they settled into the moment. Jake instinctively searched her eyes, hoping to find clarity, yet there was still a flicker of wariness. "Thank you for coming," he began, his voice steady but laced with vulnerability. "I know it's been hard to talk about the past. It took me a while to understand that accepting it isn't the same as letting it define us." Grams nodded, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. "It hasn't been easy for me either, Jake. The shadows of past mistakes linger heavily, and I've struggled to allow anyone, even you, to see my fears." The acknowledgement felt like a tentative bridge building between them, a chance to weave their understanding through shared humility. "What if we take small steps?" Jake suggested, his heart quickening. "We can talk about what the letters meant to us. We don't have to resolve everything today, but we can start untangling the threads." Grams took a moment, contemplating his words. "That sounds fair," she finally replied, her voice softening. "I think I've been afraid that if I open up, the pain will resurface, but I see now that sharing my truth is also an act of courage." Jake listened as she began recounting her own family history, her words layered with regret and hope. The deeper they delved into their truths, the more the pieces of their lives began to crystallize. Each shared story drew them closer, revealing the intricacies of their lives, Graham's struggles, her longings, and the pride that once consumed her decisions. Jake found himself doing the same, navigating the current of grief he felt over their family's history while celebrating the minor victories of learning to forgive himself. As Graham spoke, Jake felt the weight of expectation lighten. He saw a new roadmap unfolding before them, one that acknowledged the complexity of their bond instead of using words as weapons. The cafe bustled around them, yet inside a cocoon of understanding formed. Each shared laugh and tear felt monumental, rekindling their bond. Jake understood that confronting their histories would not erase the past, but together they could create a new narrative, one built on transparency and empathy. As Grams cautiously opened up about her relationship with Aunt Marlene, Jake offered his insights about his own apprehensions. "I think deep down we all want connection. Fear just blinds us," he said, a newfound conviction underlying his words. Graham's eyes glimmered with unshed tears. "You've learned so much more than I ever anticipated, Jake. It took me far too long to see the beauty and honesty." The sincerity of her gaze stirred something fundamental, an acknowledgement of growth. After nearly 2 hours of soul-bearing, a comfortable silence fell between them. They sipped their coffee, letting the moment wash over them. For the first time in years, Jake felt like he was nurturing a connection rather than trying to force it. "Would you consider writing a letter to Aunt Marlene, together?" he proposed, leaning forward. The thought of confronting the past, side by side, ignited that familiar ember of determination within him. "The bond we've started to rebuild could help with the others." Grams hesitated, but then a gentle smile graced her features. "Perhaps we can begin with a joint letter to her. You showed me that facing the truth doesn't have to be an isolating endeavor. It can be a shared journey." Jake felt a rush of exhilaration at her words. This was not just about facing Aunt Marlene, but an invitation for both of them to confront unresolved issues collectively. Tomorrow, they would be allies, taking back their power from the burdens that had stifled their families for generations. As they finished their drinks, Jake realized how different he felt compared to just weeks ago. He was no longer just a man caught in a cycle of betrayal. He had transformed into a vessel of hope and empowerment for not just himself, but for Grams as well. Leaving the cafe, he glanced at the towering buildings around him, their shadows a stark reminder of the obstacles he had faced. Yet with each step forward, he shed layers of doubt, emerging more competent and whole than before. The transformation was palpable. Jake had conquered his past, allowing his vulnerability to intertwine with his evolution. He felt a lightness in his chest, one fueled not by a need for redemption from wealth lost, but from the reconnection forming with Grams, an emotional victory that was perhaps more significant than any financial success. The next chapter awaited them, The response to Aunt Marlene's letter would soon reveal all that they had begun and just how far their newfound resilience could carry them. Now it's your turn to take action. You need to subscribe now. Don't miss our future exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us reach more people who can benefit from these transformative tales. Comment your reactions and theories about Jake and Graham's journey. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second.